Alright guys, Murphy Firearms Training here. Playing around on my reloading bench. Reloaded some shells here. So I've got this guy. This is a 3/4 ounce load that I use for close range stuff. Just normal loading process. Powder, wad, shot. Put an overshot card in here. And what I'm about to do, you have to have an overshot card. This particular recipe from one of my loading manuals specifically calls for an overshot card, because without it, your crimp will go too deep and it'll cave in. So you have to have the overshot card. It just so happens that I ordered some of these number 8 overshot cards because the plain ones were out of stock. And I do most of my loading is number 8s. I do some 6s. And so for all my number 8 loads, I can put that in there. And if I do a roll crimp, it looks really cool. So I got this little roll crimper here. This is from BPI. It's the single pin version. It's the cheaper one because I'm cheap. I got it chucked into my drill here and got that ready. And I also went ahead and got this hull vise. I caught it on sale. If you do a lot of roll crimping, it's pretty handy. You could just hold this shell with your hand. So I've done a handful of these, and I've got everything ready. The only thing you would do on the press is you would go ahead and do your starter crimp and then your finished crimp operation. So I'm going to show you how to roll crimp something. These are new hulls. It's really hard to roll crimp a once fired hull unless it was previously roll crimped. And even then, if it doesn't open properly, it's really, really hard to roll crimp it. And at some point, I'll show you guys how to handle that as well. They've got this little conical deal they sell that you put in there and recondition the hulls. And it's basically the opposite of this. This closes them up, and that bad boy opens them back up so that it's a nice uniform hull. So anyway, but if you roll crimping new hulls, I got my grill lighter here. And I will literally light my grill lighter. See if it'll work. There we go. And I'll just go around this thing twice. I'll just kind of very slowly go around this thing. And it shouldn't be hot, but it should be almost warm. Not quite enough. It should feel warm to your hand. It should be hotter than body temperature. Okay? If it's so hot that you can't touch it, it's too hot. It'll melt the plastic. But you want it to be warm to your hand. Okay, so I'm going to go around this thing a little bit, give it another try, and that's nice. I can hold it to my hand, but it's definitely warm. Okay, clamp this guy down, and I just keep a thumb against it. Put this over it. And press. And it's almost there. There we go. And it'll get really hot once you use it. And there's a roll crimp. And it's really cool. It's in there secure. You won't hear this thing rattling. It's a nice solid crimp. It's a little longer than if you used a 6 or an 8-point star crimp. But that's it. That's your roll crimp. And you're good to go. So you set that to the side. You get the next one. And once you get a few and you get this bit warm, it actually goes faster. And that's it. And you just push till you feel it bottom out. No, it's not it. I thought it bottomed out. I lied to you. It felt too quick. There we go. All right. So you want to push till you feel it bottom out. Matter of fact, I'm going to do one wrong just to show you what it looks like. Because I've made a few mistakes, and I think once you make them, you realize... All right, stop there. So if you stop too early, you'll see it's just started folding over. Focus, camera. But it's not gone, that lip has not gone all the way down to that number 8 card. And this thing will rattle loose, so it's not done. And if you're using a drill press, I don't have a drill press. Okay, but if you're using a drill press, you can actually set your stop on your drill press so that it stops at the same point every time. Once you get one right, every one of them will stop at that same height. And so it's, on a drill press, it's almost idiot-proof. But I do my stuff by hand. And so you see you got this nice even. And the big thing when you're doing this is to try very hard to hold the drill level and not to stand here and talk. But to keep crimping, because this thing gets hot. It's actually hotter than it was when I started. And there's one that I boo-booed on. So you see that gap there? Okay, that gap, if you stop there, is not going to seal the shell properly, and it won't go off in the gun because everything's too loose. So that's what happens when you sit there and talk and don't finish your roll crimp. So it should be pressed down nice and tight. You shouldn't hear any shot rattling. If your shot's rattling, your roll crimp's not tight enough. You need to press harder. You want a good tight roll crimp. If you don't have a good tight roll crimp, you don't get good ignition. So here goes. Okay, and for those of you wondering, I do press pretty hard on these. And again, I just give them a quick shake, make sure everything's down firm. And you can see, because it's a see-through shell, you can see that this plastic has actually folded over, and the original edge has folded down and is touching that number 8 card. Okay, and that's your goal. So anyway, and you can roll through these pretty quickly. I probably roll crimp 10 a minute would be my guess, give or take a little. It doesn't take long, 5 or 6 seconds per shell. I love to roll crimp buckshot. I think it's just a really cool looking shell. I don't normally roll crimp number 8s. This is what I happened to be loading, and I decided to do this video. So anyway, you know, not really something I normally roll crimp. But if you don't have this handy little doodad, the hull vise from BPI, you don't have to have it. I bought it when I bought this. It came as a package. You can hold it by hand, but when you really start bearing down, it's really hard to keep this thing from spinning. It can be done. I wanted to do one to show you it can be done, but it wears your hand out real quick trying to hold this thing from spinning, because there's a lot of friction that goes into deforming that plastic. So that'll be the last one I ever do by hand. That's why I bought this. And you can jerry rig your own thing with a table vise and some rubber. You know, some wooden blocks. You could drill a 3/4 inch hole in a wooden block and then split it down the middle. You don't have to buy their product. I mean, they're not sponsoring me or anything. But when I bought this guy, it came in a kit with this guy and some overshot cards. And so I bought it all as a kit. And I'm glad I did, because it definitely works well. I may eventually bolt this guy down to the workbench. But right now it's loose. And you see that even with it loose, and the nice thing about it being loose, of course, is that I can just go put it on the shelf and not. But I just literally just put a little pressure against that. And done. And you get a lot longer lever arm with this than you do trying to hold these by hand. So anyway, it's a really cool looking shell. It's a cool way to load. I love the clear hull and the roll crimp. It's just a gorgeous shell. That's how I load all my buckshot, is with a clear hull and an overshot card. And I'll use a blank overshot card for my buckshot, and I actually put the number of pellets on the overshot card. So anyway, if you thought about buying one of these, you wanted to know how to use it, what it looked like, and if you do a box of 25 in pretty rapid succession, this thing will be hot enough you can't touch it. It gets pretty warm. I've never roll crimped more than a box at a time, but I would caution, if you're going to try and roll crimp like 200 in very rapid succession, you might have to actually cool it off. But the secret to good roll crimps is to preheat this thing, not to start with it cold. Most folks will ruin their first 2 or 3 shells heating this up, and then their roll crimps are beautiful. I just preheat it with a grill lighter till it's warm to the touch, and the very first crimp to the last is beautiful. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments, and thanks for watching.